Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Well done, Nick, on the new intro. That's awesome. In case you guys missed it, last week we announced that we officially have Phrasehoff now. So we have Phrasehoff in lovely Austintown, Ohio. It is amazing. As you guys can see, if you're looking at the building, it looks spectacular. Also looks awesome from the inside. It is on a good little, I have to go check so I don't misspeak on the acreage, but a good little couple of acres there of decently wooded property that's nice. It's really so much that we dreamed about and wanted, and we have been greatly blessed with it. So we are very excited about that. Ericksons have been out there now for a few weeks, putting in work. It's basically turnkey in a lot of ways, but we need to get my co-host tonight out there to do his magic and paint his mural in there. We need to get some other stuff done. There's always little stuff to be done, but it's a very nice building in very good condition, and pretty excited about all of it. So wanted to start the show talking about how spectacular that is, and able to do it because you guys are generous. We appreciate y'all's generosity. So as of now, we have $20,030 towards the overall goal. We're trying to get to $125,000. So I think it came out to $169 per member would pay that Hoff off today. Yes, that is ambitious, but if you guys want to do it, let's go for it. But yeah, that's where we're at. We're already 16% of the way paid off, and yeah, we're pretty excited about that. And you know what? I absolutely did my math wrong. So the figure that I just quoted is wrong. When Svan is talking, I will recalculate and give you guys a better number because now it's playing with matism. So there you have it. On that note, coming up. So sneaks up on me. These events come up fast the older I get. Winter Nights in New Hampshire is... I will be leaving a week from today, and it's going to be, a week and 2 days from now. It's going to be great. It's at our folk builder Ron's property there, and we did it there last year. It's a beautiful property. He's got space there that they've been actively practicing Asatru and worshiping the gods there for decades. It's a really nice location. It's going to be a really nice event. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. I probably ready, but even more so here in about a week and a half. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. We've got some fantastic people in the Northeast showing up there. I look forward to seeing everybody. If you can make it, make the time. We would love to see you there. Contact your local folk builder and they can get you all set up. If you are not a member, you should come on out and check it out. Again, talk to that local folk builder or any of our folk builders for that matter. If you are a member, it's a great time to get involved and come out and be part of something. If you do all the time, then I'm excited to see you once again. And if this is your first time, there is no better time than to jump right in. So this is a really good opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it. And that's coming up October 10th through the 12th. So hopefully I see you guys there. Also, to start off the show, as is his custom and is greatly appreciated, GW Farnsworth donated $25 to this program and $50 towards paying off Phrasehoff. So we're to $20,080 so far towards that goal. Yeah, we got good things happening. It is a great time to be involved in the Asatru Folk Assembly. Suppose this is as good a time as any to say, if you are listening to this or watching this, if you are a heterosexual white person that wants to come home to your gods, then you should join us. runestone.org/join. Get involved, be on the team. We would love to have you with us. We are doing amazing things together, and we would love for you to be a part of that. People have in their idea a lot of ideas about, or people have in their head a lot of ideas about when, when's the right time? One of these days. Well, maybe when I have a few more paychecks, or maybe when I move, or maybe when I settle down, or join today. Today is the day. Seize the moment. The time is now. We got great things to do together. So I would highly encourage that. Also, help spread news about the show. Word of mouth is really important, especially with the options we have available for advertising these days. So if you like what you hear, if it is spiritually edifying and uplifting to you, by all means, share it around. If it's just entertaining, great. We'd love to have you guys with us. Chances are more than a few people that might benefit from our program and might like to get involved. So please spread the word, like, share, subscribe. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate our audience. As always, our show is heavily question and answer driven. So if you have questions, please, we absolutely will answer those when we get done with the material tonight. Please ask whenever you like. And I mean whenever you like. So if you're not aware, anytime throughout your week, you can email questions to vns@runestone.org, and we will answer those the very next time we are on. So yeah, get the questions coming if you got them. Appreciate you guys being here. Tonight we're going to read Sigurðarkviða hin skamma. And Svan's going to take us through the material. As always, I say as always, as with both prose and Poetic Eddas, we'll be using voluspa.org. It's very convenient. It's got a lot of stuff there. It's where you can read along if you'd like, or feel free to read any translation that you've got. But yeah, is there anything these folks need to know, Svan, before we get into the material?
Yeah, so we have been through all manner of angles as these poems follow in the Codex Regius. They are, some of them are fragmented, some of them are full. Well, this one is one of the full ones. It is completely contained, and it has some interesting things in it. There is even a rumor that it might have been composed in Greenland, but I am not a believer in that because of usage of wording. However, all of these that follow the Volsunga saga clearly have poetic uses, and it's always, of course, tied to the fact that the Saga of the Volsungs, Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, all of them, that ultimately comes from continental Europe. And so this is a product of Nordic poetry formulating what was most likely a very common story to tell. And so it codifies it. And in a lot of those attempts, there was a desire for the poets to create language that could be memorized and utilized and have its own signature style. So this one is very, very wrought with just dynamic wording. And it kind of goes over a part that we've already covered. This kind of takes place where Sigurd is going, he has left the mountain where Brynhild is, and he runs into Gunnar, or Gyuki's children, the two brothers, Gunnar and Holni, and he also meets Gudrun. And that's where he is tricked into falling for Gudrun by their mother with witchery. So it kind of goes from him leaving Brynhild and all of that which kind of transpired, and then it immediately jumps back to now he is jumping the fire for Gunnar. One of the big cruxes of the whole situation that a lot of people might not know is or understand is just that Sigurd proclaiming his love and jumping over the fire to Brynhild and then leaving and then coming or leaving and falling in love, even though he proclaimed his love to her. And then Brynhild not knowing that Gunnar tricked Sigurd again into jumping the fire for him. And so she had made the oath that she would fall in love with the one who jumped the fire. And since the first one, he's nowhere to be found, she goes with the second one, even though it was the same person both times, but she thinks it's Gunnar. So when she finally gets into this court, she realizes Gunnar tricked Sigurd, and she just becomes very, very wrathful, is to say the least. And all of these oaths and oath breaking and all of the things that she's involved with end up kind of burning the kingdom down from the inside out. So we're getting a kind of a look at that moment. Sigurd is now is alive. Brynhild is at the mountain, and Gudrun and Sigurd are newly in love at the sorcery of Gudrun's mother. So that's kind of it's we're jumping back a little bit, but again, when we get a full poem with lots of dynamic writing, that's when we get the best stuff about the way our ancestors viewed faith, the gods, and social and cultural edicts, which I think is ultimately the reason why we're doing all of this, is to kind of share that. So if there's anybody wondering why are they going over kind of all of these? Well, one, it's because a lot of people don't ever go over these on their own. And two, there's always little nuggets of wisdom that we viciously expound on during these. So that's always fun. But yeah, that's about it. This is one of the subsequent poems that follows the Volsunga saga and was composed and was utilized and focused on key moments during the story. And it's also really important, I think, for people to realize that most of these were stories before they were poems. The stories of the gods and all of that are codified in a poetic tradition. But before that, there was probably codified versions of poetic traditions, and also there were probably just simple retellings of the stories. So these poetics represent a kind of, imagine like a refined martial art where just the simple retellings of the stories is combat. The poetics is a martial art. It's constructed, it's looked at, it has different angles and different purposes as to why they're being produced. Normally for us on this other side of histories, these are just composed, and we don't necessarily understand that these poems had a lot of different meanings and had a lot of different purposes. And for us, it's just they survived, but for them, it was to maintain certain types of meter and styles and things of that nature. So. I didn't know if you wanted to just hop right in or answer any questions before we roll.
No, I mean, I think the questions we've got, we can get after it. We can also, by all means, keep in mind, guys, we can thread in questions if they're relating to the text whenever you guys might like to. But no, I'm good with us jumping right in whenever you are ready.
Okay. So,
as promised, I apologize. As promised, number I quoted earlier was wrong. 142 per member would get the Hoff paid off immediately.
Oh, dang. There was one other thing. Let me just see something really quickly. There was a thing that I found, which I thought was very interesting. So generally, for those that might need to know, the idea of continental Europe in relation to the Volsunga saga and the Nibelungs, the Mistwalkers, as that translates, is most likely incorporating the lands north of Italy, and that would be from northeastern France to all the way east in what is now Romania and Ukraine. So this is where this story really formulates itself, and you'll see it in the poems mentioned that Sigurd is from the Southlands, and the reasoning behind this is because from the Baltic Sea, Jutland or Denmark and Theuskaland. I always forget what Germany's called in Icelandic. The land of the people, and Frankaland. All of those places are south. So, but I found some interesting stuff looking at kind of maps of, as names are mentioned, this area is covering all the way from the Gutenish people in the east, or the Goths, all the way to the Franks. And there is some historical referencing that members of Frankish royalty, long before converting to Catholicism, of course, may have been huge contributors to the characters that by the time it reached the Norse, they had been fleshed out more because of actual historical people in France at the time. So I'm going to actually look at that a little. I'm going to try to find it, but I'll do it as we're going because it's, not that important, but it's kind of just interesting to note. So I love the beginning. Our var, years of old. Of old did Sigurd Gjuki seek. So Bellows' translation of old, he's meaning of times of old, in the times of old. The first part, our, means year, and var, of course, is of long standing. So of years of long standing. In the days of old, Sigurd Gjuki did Sigurd Gjuki seek. So Sigurd is told by the brothers, Hogni and Gunnar, to go and talk to their father, Gjuki. They're like, you're amazing. You're awesome. We heard about the dragon slaying. Our sister's really smitten with you. She's beautiful. And now you're smitten with her. And, you're to be wed. And you should go and talk to our father in his kingdom. So Sigurd goes to Gjuki. And he is, of course, a Volsung. So the Volsung, young in battle, victor, well he trusted the brothers twain, with mighty oaths among them sworn. So they had time in the mead hall, and they were united, and this, of course, sets the tone. This is when Sigurd is young and is fresh from slaying Fafnir. The maiden they gave him and jewels many, Gudrun the young, the daughter of Gjuki. They drank and spake full many a day. Sigurd the young and Gjuki's sons. Thereafter went they, Brynhild to woo, and so with them did Sigurd ride. So it's a brief, like it's a condensement of that whole situation, where now things have turned around and they go into much more greater detail in the Volsunga saga.
It's because this is hin skamma.
Yes, the kind of shorter, and it's kind of funny just because of how long the poem is. But yes. This is it glosses much, and I think again the purpose of this poem was to teach poets, not necessarily to speak about a subject that most of the audience was very well familiar with already, but as a supplemental or addition. So again, if you're just tuning in and haven't been following us with the Sigurd or the Dragon Slayer cycle, the Sigurd is again connected now to Gudrun. He forgets about his love, Brynhild, on the mountain. But in turning, he says to the brothers that there is the fire upon the mountain, a great maiden there. And so they decide to go there and try to jump the fire to woo her. And they are unaware that Sigurd has already done so. So this is where all of the layers of calamities start to kind of tie themselves into a knot before everything eventually gets undone. Thereafter went they, Brynhild to woo, and so with them did Sigurd ride, the Volsung young, in battle valiant. Himself would have had her if all he had seen. The southern hero, there's the southern part that I was talking about. The southern hero, his naked sword, fair flashing, let between them lie. Nor would he come to the maid to kiss. The Hunnish king in his arms never held. The maiden he gave to Gjuki's son. So just in that, again, very, very broad, flashing words, strong and stark, really showing off poetic inflections, but very swiftly going over things in the stories. And the daughter of the Hunnish folk is Brynhild. But when he goes there and Gunnar cannot jump the fire, they use sorcery and cover Sigurd, and he jumps the fire a second time because he's pure of heart or pure bravery. And he knows, though, that he is doing it for his friend, Gunnar. So he puts his sword in between himself and Brynhild. And Brynhild is confused because this isn't Sigurd. Sigurd jumped it and then left and has not returned. And now another person has jumped it. And she's already made her oaths. But the overarching oath of going with the person who jumps and remains leaves her to go with Gunnar, who she doesn't know is actually Sigurd again. So he gives the maiden he gave to Gjuki's son. Ill she had known not in all her life. This is speaking about Brynhild. And not of the sorrows of men she knew. Blame she had not, nor dreamed she should bear it, but cruel the fates that among them came. And so this is kind of an interesting point because it doesn't necessarily bring up the fact that the reason why Brunhild, or Battle Armor is her name, is on the mountain for directly disobeying Lord Odin. So it kind of glosses over that. I think that ultimately the purpose is, again, wordage, and I think it also lends to an interesting concept that this was all kind of foreseen and that they were unable to see the outcome of everything that was to come. And also that the ring inside the hoard of the dragon is ultimately cursed. Perhaps it's shrouding everything from everyone so that it can just wreak havoc, if you will. By herself at the end of the day she sat, and in open words her heart she uttered, I shall Sigurd have, the young hero, e'en though within my arms he dies. The word I have spoken, soon shall I rue it. His wife is Gudrun, and Gunnar am I, or Gunnar's am I. Ill Norns set for me long desire. So she's lamenting the fact that she loves Sigurd, and as she has found out throughout the story that Sigurd is with Gudrun and she now with Gunnar, her heart is broken, and ill are the Nornir, the spinners of fate, and they have set her in tragedy because her heart is filled with long desire. So in 8.
So before we can continue for a sec, I would like to just take a moment to notice Michael in Alabama, who donated $40 to General Fund. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. Adrian in Minnesota donated $15 towards getting Baldur's Steeple replaced. Thank you for that. We appreciate it very much. And Gilbert donated $150 to beautify Thorshof. If this gets on VNS, can y'all mention the Thorshof beautification project? So there is a project to beautify Thorshof. No, so details on what exactly that's running. Thorshof is amazing, and it's the oldest. The building itself is the oldest Hof we have. I believe the building, as it is now, dates back in the actual Bay area, dates back to the 1870s. Looks like the paint job is the original paint job. so it needs some touch-up work, and gentlemen are going to be working on that here in the coming months, and we appreciate your donation, Gilbert, to help make that as spectacular for the Thunderer as possible. It is much appreciated, I'm sure. Carry on.
Yeah, they're coming down and spending time out there, making sure, and redoing the outside, and that's going to take commitment to being there on site. It's not something that can be done just in a day, so there's a lot of that as well. In 8, oft did she go with the grieving heart on the glacier's ice at eventide. Again, this is an interesting point, and why people think that it might have been composed in Greenland, or I don't think that it does, because there are glaciers in Iceland. There are glaciers in Norway, but most importantly is understanding that this is centered in continental Europe. And to be honest, I mean, that there are glacial shifts in the Alps as well. So I don't even think that it necessarily just harkens to the fact that this is somehow uniquely Icelandic in its understanding. I think glaciers were understood throughout for all of our people, especially coming out of the time of migration. But people have come up with this in their head. But I think it's worth noting that this is interesting because then it moves into the next stanza. And the next stanza is actually an interpolation that was not in the original manuscript. So it's kind of an addition. And then the 10th brings us right back into the actual. And so the interpolation was introduced by a historian and scholar who, where the reasonings why he put that in and where he got that, I don't know, honestly. So she was of a grieving heart, and she found herself standing on the glacier ice in the evening, lamenting. When Gudrun then to her bed was gone, and the bedclothes Sigurd about her laid, and the Hunnish king with his wife is happy. This is the interpolation. Now Gyuki's child to her lover goes. Joyless I am, and mateless ever, till cries from my heavy heart burst forth. So, in essence, she's lamenting that Gudrun goes to her love, and she must go to Gunnar, who was not brave enough to jump the fire, and Sigurd tricked her as she perceives it. So now she's just completely forlorn and has to go to or is wed to the person she doesn't love. In her wrath to battle, she roused herself. Gunnar, now thou needs must lose lands of mine and me myself. No joy shall I have with the hero ever. So at this point, this is where she realizes I can never have Sigurd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Gunnar an agent in my destruction of both Sigurd and himself and everything around. 11, back shall I fare, where first I dwelt among the kin that come of my race. To wait there, sleeping my life away, if Sigurd's death thou shalt not dare, and best of heroes thou shalt not be. So she's going to leave and reside amongst the Huns and fall into despair if he doesn't bring about vengeance against Sigurd. The son shall fare with his father hence, and let not long the wolf cub live. Lighter to pay is the vengeance price after the deed if the son is dead. So the son is the 3-year-old son of Sigurd and Gudrun. His name is Sigmund. And again, Brynhild wants him dead as well, because he is a physical representation of her, or as she perceives Gudrun's trickery. And of course, Gunnar is the uncle of that child. So, and he's in a bad way because ultimately he started all of this by asking Sigurd to jump the fire. So in 13, sad was Gunnar and bowed with grief, deep in thought the whole day through, yet from his heart it was ever hid what deed most fitting he should find, or what thing best for him should be, or if he should seek the Volsung to slay. for with mighty longing Sigurd he loved. So deep in his heart, they had made oaths and were friends. And now Brynhild wants him to slay the son of his sister. And so he's deeply conflicted. And again, this is all very, very flashpoint swift. And the purpose of it is, again, expressing, giving poetic just power chops in every verse. Let me see. So 14, much he pondered for many an hour. Never before was the wonder known that a queen should thus her kingdom leave. In council then did Hogni call, for him in truest trust he held. So never before had a queen threatened to leave and go back to her people after marriage. He didn't know what to do. He's toiling with this. So his brother Hogni, he calls, they come together in council, and he trusts him utmost. And of course, since we've covered this already, it is in other versions, it is their third brother, their youngest brother, that is ultimately brought to do the deed and kill Sigurd. And in one version, he's ambushed while sleeping, and the other is that he is met in battle, but the youngest brother is so incensed with might and magic that he is able to kill Sigurd. But we'll find out if this even mentions that. So they go together in council. 15. More than all to me is Brynhild, Buthli's child, the best of women. My very life would I sooner lose than yield the love of yonder maid. So now Gunnar is kind of written as a just deeply, he does not want to lose her. He is in love with her, even though he was not brave to jump the fire. And this again sets the precedent of why he will do almost anything. That he is the perfect tool for Brynhild's revenge.
So I am going to digress for a second because we got some ongoing themes in the chat room. And I don't know if I'm pounding them because it's taking me half an hour to drink one, but I am absolutely drinking some beers tonight. Tonight I am drinking Sierra Nevada IPA selection. I get the variety pack at Costco because it entertains me. And this one is a Atomic Torpedo coming in at 9.2%. So there you go. Other thing, the big kind of topic in there that I figure we'd quick address is thoughts on Pete Hegseth's declaring no more Nordic pagan beardos. Beards not being professional will be required. They'll be required shaving. So I don't know that this one ever goes away, but this has been something that non-members, but various Asatru who are misguided, reach out to the AFA as recently as last week to try to get us to write them some kind of religious exemption so that they can have beards in the military. There is absolutely no religious requirement that you must have a beard to practice Asatru. That's.
I think I know where that kind of started, though. It's a modern thing.
People like to. So I want to be fair, though, and yes, I find it ridiculous, but I think that when somebody newly comes to Asatru, they come up with in their head what they think it's supposed to be. Oftentimes that is informed by strange pop culture nuggets and not by deep wisdom or, a deep relationship with the Iseer. And, for what it's worth, we shouldn't expect that. They're coming from nothing to their first forays into Asatru often. Everybody starts somewhere. If you started by watching Vikings or whatever on the TV, then your presets are going to be real different than the reality of our faith and how it's practiced. So I think, some of it's not poorly intentioned, but we tend to use snowflake as a pejorative to young lefties and all their absurd nonsense. But I think we need to be aware of when people on our team do that stuff too. Everybody wants different little special rules for very little reason. There's no requirement to do that. That's not a thing. Our ancestors at various times had beards, had no beards and just mustaches, had no mustaches and just beards, had shaved sides of their head, went bald, went growing their hair super long. Grooming styles and hair and facial hair fashion has changed throughout the entire course of our folk. The one thing that has stayed constant is people are excited about making sure they've got a good looking haircut and a good looking beard. It's one of the things that even the people that, claim about Viking barbarism with their beards and whatever, no, they took immaculate care of washing them and combing them and trimming them. And that's one of, if not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the most common artifact they find is things related to grooming, be it a comb, be it a earwax scoop, be it a little scissors kind of clipper thingy to clip hairs. Those things have always been really important to our ancestors because looking sharp is important. Looking sloppy is not. Wanting an excuse to be a different snowflake, that's not what the military is geared towards. And I don't want to overstep, but I think that Svan, being a veteran, can speak to that a little bit more. There's a time and a place, and conformity and uniformity of grooming standards and appearance is really important in, our proud, very much our Western military tradition. And we don't, something else that I want to address is the people that reach out saying, AFA, please write me a religious exemption. The most recent guy who did said, I know it's not required to have a beard to do Asatru, but please write me a religious exemption. Some people don't understand that we take this very, very seriously. For us to put the moral weight of the Asatru Folk Assembly behind a position, we can't do that for a purpose that we do not believe is religiously valid. We're not going to tell the government that the gods require you to have a beard unless we believe that the gods require you to have a beard, and they simply don't. I noticed some people talking in the chat about examples, and yeah, there have been examples in the past of tribal traditions of not being able to have a beard until you accomplish something on the battlefield, or not being able to shave until you have something accomplished. Somebody points out Harold Harfager, his hair thing. Yeah, until he accomplished a deed, he was letting his hair grow and get matted and looking gross and looking homeless until he could, because that was a mark of shame, because the longer it took for him to accomplish his task, that was the motivation to fix it so that he could show up shaved. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And I'm sure there are ways that you can make a personal oath that is expressed through your grooming habits. But if you sign up to meet a certain standard of how you're going to look and how you're going to behave, you need to get in line and do that. That's important. But But yeah, I'm glad that he said it. I am embarrassed that he had to. I think that when our folks spend that very, very precious capital of being taken seriously on wanting my Viking beard, I think that takes away from when you have a legitimate use for that, or you want to actually stand on principle about something that matters. You've already used up a lot of that credibility by requesting things that are silly and eccentric without validity. So that's my thoughts on it. Svan, do you have anything to add on that, being a veteran?
Well, and also being a barber. Like that's
Yeah, there you go. You got multiple angles.
Right, double barrel on that one. No, I think from the historical and barber perspective, if there was any case to be made, it would be a cultural one. I know that during in Germany, that the mustache is the symbol all the way back to the Roman age. When there was a Germanic leader who coined or minted any coins in Rome, it was known that he was Germanic on the coin because his little effigy had a mustache. That was like, oh, that's definitely a Germanic or a Northerner. And it was so important that during one of the, I believe it was the Second Reich, they had, there were members of the military that were in marching groups. And if they could not grow a mustache, they painted one on them. And then inversely, the Amish are so in dedication to pacifism from the Torah or the Bible that they shave their mustaches off as an exempt, or standing against the Germanic culture of mustaches and war or warriors. But this goes across all like Aryan branches, the Slavs with the Cossackies and their giant mustaches and mohawks with their sides of their heads shaved. You know, all the way to even the Gauls. Vercingetorix is mentioned as having a giant mustache when he's brought in before Caesar. So a beard is absolutely optional, and I don't think it necessarily has a case that you would say that somehow the gods have decreed that we need mustaches, but it's certainly cultural, and the military does allow for mustaches. Actually, they're quite popular in certain circles, depending on who you're connected to, whether you're in, you know, special operations or Marine Corps Raiders, or like sometimes even just whole, like it'll be popular on the East Coast with some of the Navy, while the West Coast, it might not be so popular. So there's nothing saying that you can't have a mustache. So that kind of immediately knocks that out. The Bronze Age and the usage of razors was such a big flex back in the day that it was oftentimes a sign of royalty. And that's happened. There's been these kind of waves of shaving, no shaving, shaving, and no shaving. We see that like with the Civil War and by World War II, the big giant mustaches are gone. You need a small mustache for your gas mask. And it just goes back and forth. And you can, throughout our folk, you just see this. But there's nothing stating religiously that you must have a beard to be Asatru.
I'll go further. There's nothing stating that it's preferential or that you should have a beard to be Asatru.
Right. I mean, there are some foreign militaries that have beards, the Norwegian, the British, and it would be cool if the military decreed that.
Sometimes people can't grow a beard and try to, and it looks terrible. Sometimes people have amazing beards.
Right.
This isn't an anti-beard polemic, but that's not a fundamental tenet of Asatru, is one must have a beard. Other thing I want to say, just because it's going on in the chat room, and we'll get back into the text. Tyler, you should join. You take your time, do what you need to do, and if you decide to join down the road, that's fantastic. But I'd encourage you to join now. You mentioned you're in the Bible Belt. That is our strongest area of membership, I would say.
So am I.
You can be as open about your membership in the AFA as you want to be. I would encourage you to be very open about your religious practice, but you sure don't have to be. That's up to you. We don't share, our member roles with people. That's entirely up to you how much you want to make that known to your employers or your coworkers or anybody else. But it's the right thing to do, and we'll be happy to have you join whenever you're ready. But I would highly encourage you to be ready right now. Anyways, that's my plug that I got to put out there. It's no time like the present, and I know a lot of people that have put off a lot of things in the future that they don't get around to doing, and they miss out on a lot in the meantime. And I think the other thing is, kind of a side note, I'm not saying you have to do this at all. There's this big fear thing. Once you are open and honest about who you are and what you believe, and folks know that going in, then you don't have to cross that bridge at a different time. It's out there, it is, and you cannot worry about that. And I think it works better than people think. People don't get fired for being AFA members. They don't get fired for being Asatru. I know of that happening one time in the United States. That person's doing really well now because of that. So that's not a big thing. Tons of people are very open about who they are. I think that's much more of a, doing edgy political activism is a much bigger concern than your church affiliation. But I will say this, you fare far better with your employer when you are open and proud and happy about your religious practice than if it's some big secret that gets exposed and then you're on your heels acting guilty. Everyone I know who's been upfront about, just not hiding it and just being happy about who they are, it's never been a problem. The people that it's been problematic for have been people who it was like some secret and then they acted very defensive when it was brought to their attention. Just putting it out there. You come around whenever you want to come around, but I would encourage that to be the day. Anyways, Svan, if you would take us back into the text at your leisure.
All right. Oh, I was also going to say Primal Mike Kindred said he's not in the AFA, but you should consider joining. But he said that he is.
I already told him that this morning. I stand by that. He absolutely should. But I appreciate you wanting to donate, and I'm the Alls-Harrier-Gothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Yes, I'm going to tell you every single day that you should join us and you should be here because you should. I firmly believe that, or I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting. But that said, I really appreciate all you guys joining us and being in the audience. You guys are welcome. I'm not going to be overly pushy, but I got to push a little because it's like literally my job.
So as we go into verse 16, and we're at the point where Gunnar is telling his brother, I will not do anything to lose her love. I will do anything. So he's in this point of conflict. He says, wilt thou the hero for wealth betray? 'Twere good to have the gold of the Rhine and all the hoard in peace to hold, and waiting fortune thus to win. Few the words of Hogni were, his brother. Us it beseems not so to do, to cleave with swords the oaths we swore, and all our vows. We know no mightier men on earth, while we four over the folk hold sway. And while the Hunnish hero lives, nor higher kinship the world doth hold. If sons we five shall soon beget, great methinks our race shall grow. So this is I love this verse. Or the actually 17 and 18, because Hogni is saying things, but generally he's kind of given a very minuscule place in the other stories. But here he's saying, of all the tribes and of all the people, we are the greatest, the highest. And if we have children, our greatness will pass on and grow, and we will have so much interconnected, all the way to the far, far east in Romania and in the lands where the Huns are pushing in, all the way to the western coast of France. Our folk are finally kind of united in this tribal alliance under the great just might of all of these king warriors. And so I really love how it's kind of portrayed there. And he says it, I mean, all the poetics in this poem are amazing. But again, he's saying, I don't think you should go and attack Sigurd. I don't think that this we are tearing ourselves down at a time of our greatest height. And he warns about that, and he tells his brother so. And all too, again, to what? To satiate Brynhild's hate, in hopes that if you slay him, somehow she will love you more. So very, very just tragic and beautiful stuff. He continues to say, just at the very end, he says, if sons we five shall soon beget, great methinks our race shall grow. Well, I see whence lead the ways. Too bitter far is Brynhild's hate. So he says her hatred is going to lead us into ruin. Then Gunnar speaks in return. Gothorm to wrath we needs must rouse. Our younger brother. So he doesn't even listen to his brother and the wise counsel. He's like, no, we're going to get our little brother to do it. So he is so wrapped up in trying to make Brynhild love him that he just right around it. No. Gothorm, we're going to get him to get wrathful. We're going to rouse his anger. Our younger brother, in his rashness, he's blind. He didn't enter the oaths that we swore with Sigurd after he came down from the mountain. So he's not bound to those. Now, remember, these are oath brothers, oathmen, and that is still not good that they're, trying to find these ways to get around all of this. And I think Hogni stays with his brother throughout all of this because he is his brother, but not because he believes he's correct. Another tragic character that's not often talked about. So in 20, he says, Gothorm to wrath we needs must rouse. Our younger brother in rashness, blind, he entered not in the oaths we swore, and all of our vows. He's not a part of it. In 21, it was easy to rouse the reckless one. The sword in the heart of Sigurd stood. So first off, if you're reading in the website, volospa.org, there's no gap indicated in the manuscript, but there's clearly a gap because there's not 4 or more lines. So the multi-dot is showing that there seems to be either a mistake in that there was something missing, or it was unknown to the person writing the poem down. There's just no understanding as to where those 2 lines went. But it very quickly goes to the inevitable is, yes, their little brother gets roused into anger. And in one version, he's drinking wolf's blood and he just goes crazy. And he breaks in. And while his sister, his older sister, is sleeping next to her husband, Sigurd, he slays him by stabbing the sword into Sigurd. And that's, of course, one of the versions, but there seem to be going specifically with that one. And I think that's probably logical, considering that this poem was constructed in the later Nordic period. And so clearly the Volsunga saga had been well known and was kind of more or less seen as, okay, this is the one we are predominantly sticking with. In vengeance, the hero rose in the hall and hurled his sword at the slayer bold. So if you don't remember, in the Volsunga saga, he pulls the sword out of himself and throws it at Guttorm.
Cleaves him in twain.
Cuts him in. I mean, because Sigurd is the dragon slayer. There's no, and to be honest, even Hogni saying, with the dragon slayer, but also us, we're just the best of the best. In reality, I mean, Sigurd's just really kind of the best of the best, and they're in his orbit. And so, yes, he in vengeance, the hero rose in the hall and hurled the sword at the slayer bold. At Gorthram flew a glittering steel of Gram full hard from the hand of the king. Again, this poem is very, very good.
Really,
the foeman cleft asunder fell, forward hands and head did sink, and legs and feet did backwards fall.
So this is double verification. This isn't just one guy getting crazy. This is what happened.
Right. Well, it's so good though. I mean, they literally describing the body falling forward while the legs or the lower half falling back. In the poem, like that's amazing. 24. Gudrun, soft in her bed, had slept, safe from care at Sigurd's side. She woke to find her joy had fled. In the blood of the friend of Freyr she lay. Now, this is an interesting part. This friend of Freyr. I looked at a lot of different angles of this, and I think, too, this is clearly a denoting of kingship. But I also wonder if Sigurd, being of or in the land of the Franks, but not from the Frankaland people, like Gudrun is and Gunnar, I'm wondering, again, if he was from slightly more north, like in the Danish or the lands in which of the Angles and the Saxons and of their connection to Lord Frey there. I know we normally think of the cult of our Holy Lord as being like really foundational in amongst the Swedes, but that wasn't the only place. It was, so I wonder too if there's just kind of this brief hinting to him being of northern stock. Of course, in the story, Lord Odin is present in the Volsunga saga repeatedly through. And we can kind of go into theories about during the migration period as the roving tribes started to settle down at the end, clearly bringing the cult of Lord Odin with them into lands that perhaps the cult of Odin was not so strong, but instead the cult of Freyr, the cult of Njord. We see this in the Ingatal, where Snorri euhemerizes the gods, and he says that after Lord Odin as a king dies, the cult of Njord resumes or comes back. So very, very interesting to think of these stories as euhemerized versions showing the cult of practice coming into play. But I think that ultimately this might lead to the idea of that Sigurd is originally of Northern German, Northern German, Lowland German, or of like a Jutlandish kind of stock.
So I want to throw in just before we keep going. And no, I'm not insane. My daughter was trying to take a whole bunch of pictures of me, so I was making faces for them. Couple few things. Primal Might Kindred. Thank you. You made good on your claim that you were going to donate, and you donated quick. $150 towards Phrasehoff. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. Man of his word. So Tyler remarks, Matt put me on the $3 Walmart wine. It's not bad at all. Tonight may be the night. That's what I'm saying. When you listen to me, good things happen. Trust and believe. Join up. And just as a plug, it's not bad at all. $3, that's the way to go. Continue.
Oh no, I was going to say too, there's something I wanted to bring up is that by you, and a lot of people that might be new to Asatru and new to our culture, what Asatru did when he said you stood true to your word, praise in our culture is often done in a third party sense. Like when you hear the idea of, they praised the gods, or they praised one of the biggest forms of praise is when someone of high significance says that you said you were going to do something and you did it, and they say it to a large group of people. That's why symbol is so important sometimes. So that's a huge thing. Just throwing that out there.
Rando user, I would not go that far, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, or I will derail us on trying to determine the in fact official drink of the AFA. But I do approve. But it is AFA approved.
I have to go back to the chat in order to see what's going on. So
no worries. I feel bad because I think sometimes I do that, and a lot of people may listen to this on Spotify or the other places. You find this fine broadcast in an audio format and might be confused as to what I'm talking about.
Right.
But that said, this poem is awesome. Silliness aside, this poem is awesome. It's really well written. And another thing that I did want to say too, those of you that may know, I am trying to learn my Old Norse via picking up bits of Old Norse vocabulary and learning Icelandic. It is very difficult and does not come naturally to the way my brain works or the way my mouth works for that matter, but I'm working on it. But what's really cool, and one of the reasons I really like these, I'm getting some kind of strange flash on my screen. Anyways, one of the things I really like about the Voluspa.org is it's got the dual translation there with the original text on one side and the translation on the other. So whenever a turn of phrase is interesting to me or they reference something that I'm curious about, and this is where it comes in handy. I start trying to learn Icelandic and other stuff, and I feel just so overwhelmed and like I'm not making progress. But there'll be bits where I'll hear it and I'll understand what people are saying. And I'll look over to the side and I'll read stuff that struck me as odd, and I'll pick things up. I'll be able to I'm not saying that I can read it in the original Old Norse and get all of the stuff, but I am saying I can fact check, you referred to him as Freyr's friend. Is that really what it said? And I can look over and it says Vinner, phrase Vinner. And okay, I know what that means. Yes, that's literally what it translates at, because sometimes they translate funny. So it's slowly but surely it's getting there. And I say that not to toot my own horn because I'm terrible at it. I say it to, if I can get it, then you certainly can. People who are better equipped at language learning, you guys can certainly pick it up. And it may seem eccentric or odd, but the little differences make a big difference. And I've found that through the process, I am learning a lot and adding a lot of like dimensionality to the lore as we go back through it. I'm getting a lot of little things out of it. So, yeah, for what it's worth, give it a try. It'll sneak up on you what you learn, and you'll be impressed with yourself when you do.
Well, and also, the Austvinir or Austvinir, the most beloved, the word meaning could be lover or friend, kind of, it's like a broad term. That was the reason why that nomenclature was one that I had really kind of came across, but it's also used later on in relation to lover. So, I think it's worth noting that people need to understand like its context: friend, lover, beloved, and the choices of words that people use when they translate. So like when you're looking back at the Old Norse, you get to see how it is delivered. Whereas with Bellows, this is just his way of kind of piecing it together, and it can be totally different than someone else's. So that's another interesting part about knowing Old Norse and learning it, is that you get to see, wait a minute, why did he want to translate it that way?
Last thing, and I'll let you get back into it. I'm just watching Primal Mike Kindred over on the side talking about, feeling that it's particularly auspicious, our announcement about Phrasehoff. I don't know what you're up to December the 6th, but that's going to be the dedication of Phrasehoff. You should come down for it. You should join, but assuming that you don't join by then, you should still come down for it. We'd love to have you there. I'd love to shake your hand and show you the Hoff.
And the mural.
Assuming you are a heterosexual white man who is not in an interracial relationship, we have to say things like that in this day and age. But if that is the case, you should definitely come down for it, because it's going to be awesome. That's going to be the dedication, and it's going to be kind of a big deal. So we'd love to have you down for it if that's something you'd like to do.
So kind of jumps back. Her brother comes in, slays Sigurd with the sword, but he gets up, pulls the sword out. But then it jumps back and it says, Gudrun soft in her bed had slept, safe from care at Sigurd's side. She woke to find her joy had fled. In the blood of the friend of Freyr she lay. So hard she smote her hands together that the hero rose up, iron-hearted. Weep not, Gudrun, grievous tears, bride so young, for thy brothers live. Too young, methinks, is my son as yet. He cannot flee from the home of his foes. Fearful and deadly the plan they found. The council knew that now they have heeded. No son will ride those 7 thou hast to the thing as the son of their sister rides. Well, I see who the ill has worked. On Brunhild alone lies the blame for all. So in essence, he's speaking again about his son, Sigmund, named after his father. And he says that he must be protected, that he's too young to flee from this place. And that your brothers are not, in essence, it's kind of saying like your brothers are not fully to blame, but that they have been bewitched by the blackened heart of Brynhild. And then he continues to speak. He says, above all men, the maiden loved me. Yet false to Gunnar, I never was found. I kept the oaths and the kinship I swore. Of his queen, the lover, none may call me. That's again, he placed the sword between him and Brynhild. He was already married to Gudrun by then. He was helping Gunnar, and he still, at this point, doesn't see kind of the weakness in Gunnar asking him to jump the fire to begin with. And if he had not have done that, if he had not succumbed to the weakness of his oathed brother, none of this would be happy. It's really, really sad. And in swoon, she sank when Sigurd died. So hard she smote her hands together that all the cups in the cupboard rang, and loud in the courtyard cried the geese. So, couple of things. If we go and look back at, I believe it was verse 24, the smoting of her hands together. Some people believe that might be an addition, and that 29 is the original verse, but was somehow moved out of memory to after the fact, and that instead it should have been that when she woke up her husband, she smote her hands, that the cups in the cupboard rang and the geese outside reacted, and that's what kind of helped him wake up. So those two are just interesting, and how poems are memorized, but then can have mix-ups like that. But it's not for sure. So he passes, and she swoons in his death. Then Brynhild, daughter of Boothly, laughed, only once, and with all her heart, when as she lay full loud she heard the grievous wail of Gjuki's daughter. So she gives out a torrential and evil laugh as Gudrun cries out at the death of Sigurd. Then Gunnar, monarch of men, spake forth. Thou dost laugh, thou lover of hate, in gladness there, or for aught of good? Why has thy face so white a hue, mother of ill, foredoomed thou art? So he says to her, I see you laughing, but deep down inside, I know you know that all of this that you have wrought is bad, and you have just brought so much doom upon everyone as it is. In 32, a worthier woman wouldst thou have been if before thine eyes we had Atli slain, if thy brother's bleeding body had seen, and the bloody wounds that thou shouldst end. And bearing in mind too, she is of Atli's people, of the Huns. So he's saying it would have been better to see you break as we slayed the king of the Huns. Brynhild speaks. None mock thee, Gunnar. Thou hast mightily fought, but thy hatred little doth Atli heed. Longer than thou, methinks, shall he live, and greater in might shall he ever remain. So he doesn't even think about you as much as you think about him, is kind of what she's saying. And he will survive long after all of their doom is wrought. To thee I say, and to thyself thou knowest, that all these ills thou didst early shape. No bonds I knew, nor sorrow bore, and wealth I had in my brother's home. Never a husband sought I to have before the Gjukungs fared into our land. 3 were the kings on steeds they came. Need of their journey never there was. So just savagery. She said, I was never looking for a husband. And you 3, the brothers of King Gjuking, rode into our lands on a journey that was never needed by me at all.
This is just so well presented. It's really cool, and I'm glad we're Glad we're going through this again. I don't think when people start out and they read the Eddas, you're looking for the big mythology tales. You're looking for the Völuspá or the Havamal or things that are high mythology or very popular. I think that we gloss over a lot of these poems, and it's only after you've been around a little bit and are more familiar with the milieu all this is in that you really appreciate these nuggets, and I'm glad we're going over them.
Yeah, and it's just really well translated and really well written in Old Norse. Like it's kind of a culmination of it gets all the bits and jagged pieces out, and it's just delivered very smoothly.
Aaron Morris, I do not know why this is in your YouTube recommends, but I'm glad that it is. I'm glad you stopped over. Hope you like what you see. Yeah, we're talking about Asatru, and we're talking specifically about a piece of Eddic lore from early medieval Iceland. So, hope you enjoy it, and I'm glad that your recommendations brought you here.
Oh, and I made a mistake too on the three kings that came to her land that she said didn't their need to journey there was not sought by her. She's actually she's speaking of Sigurd, Gunnar, and Hogni, the two older brothers, and Sigurd.
Not the Magi?
No. No, but not Gutorm, the young one, while he was probably too young to travel. So but just for her to say, like, I wasn't looking for anyone, and your journey into my lands was not wanted by me. But she then kind of doubles round and then reveals something about her love for Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. She says in 36, to the hero great my troth I gave. Troth, loyalty and honoring of commitment. We of course say that in wedding vows today with betrothed or what have you. But she says, who gold decked sat upon Grani's back. Remember, Grani, of course, is Sigurd's horse. Not like to thine was the light of his eyes, nor like in form and face are ye, though kingly both ye seemed to be. So now she's not only did I not want you, but I gave my love to the one you just plotted to slay, and he was bedecked in gold. He had the eyes of a king. He had the body of a king. And you have just the title. Is kind of what she's saying to him. Oh, just savage. Anyways, 37. And so to me did Atli say that share in our wealth I should not have, of gold or lands, if my hand I gave not. More evil yet, the wealth I should yield, the gold that he in my childhood gave me, the wealth from him in my youth I had. So if she did not get married, she would not gain the gold and titles and land and things that Atli, her father, would, or maybe I'm still not, if her father is underneath Atli, but either way, she's not given them, and then she takes a hand in wed to Gunnar and doesn't get them either, and is basically shuffled off into their kingdom. In 38, oft in my mind I pondered much, if still I should fight, and warriors fell, brave in my Birne in her chainmail armor, my brother defying. That would wide in the world be known, and sorrow for many a man would make. But the bond at last I let be made, for more the hoard I longed to have. the reference to the gold that Sigurd gained from the dragon. She wanted to be with Sigurd in love and have the power of the money that he got from slaying the dragon that would compensate for her loss in wealth by being denied by Atli. For more the hoard I longed to have, the rings that the son of Sigmund won. No other treasures ever I sought. One alone of all I loved, nor changing heart I ever had. All in the end shall Atli know when he hears I've gone on the death road hence. Of course, the death road is Hell Road, and interestingly enough, the next poem is about her trip on Hell's Road to the afterlife. So this is a bit of a foreshadowing for another episode that's coming up. A shorter poem, but interesting nonetheless, because it takes place after her death. So she says that she never changed her heart for loving Sigurd. And in the end, the only person that will be able to truly see beyond all the muck of everything going on is Atli. Or Attila. Never a wife of fickle will yet to another man should yield. So vengeance for all in my ills shall come. So she's just burning everything down. Up rose Gunnar, the people's ruler, and flung his arms round her neck so fair. And all who came of every kind sought to hold her with all their hearts. But back she cast all those who came, nor from the long road let them hold her. In council then did Hogni call. Of wisdom now full great is our need. Let the warriors here in the hall come forth, thine and mine, for the need is mighty, if haply the queen from death they may hold, till her fearful thoughts with time shall fade. So Hogni then calls, Gunnar tries to embrace Brynhild, and she says no. She flings him away as she has done in her emotional distance ever since she figured out Gunnar was not the one that jumped the fire. So then Hogni, the brother of Gunnar, says, no, let's come together now. Sigurd is dead. There are going to be many people wondering why our brother killed him. And we should have our guards here, in essence, to kind of hold down the hall and keep Brynhild from, it's kind of a double, it's to protect their interests from the wrath and the confusion of the people, but also to keep Brynhild from telling or doing more, and that eventually all of her dread will fade in time.
It's fine. We got breaking news.
Yep.
Our man Tyler decided to get off the fence and get on the team.
Oh, nice.
Well done, Tyler. I salute you.
That's
good choice.
That's cool.
Well done. Seriously.
I hope we get a chance to meet. That'd be great.
Yeah. When we get off here and you find out where he lives, you will.
Okay. Awesome. Excellent. So he says, let's get our men, all of our guards, and all of our army, our strongest folk. We're going to bring them here to the hold, and they will keep order in lieu of Sigurd's death, but they will also keep Brynhild from working any more of her evil until her fearful thoughts with time shall fade. Few words of Hogni were, From the long road now shall ye hold her not, that born again she may never be. Foul she came from her mother forth, and born she was for wicked deeds, sorrow to many a man to bring. He's, of course, speaking about Brynhild. Oh, just that is, I mean, the way that's written is just brutal. Foul she came from her mother forth, and born she was for wicked deeds. From the speaker gloomily, Gunnar turned. So away from Hogni, the one who is saying these things, Gunnar turns and is just derided with the fact that he loves Brynhild and can never have her, and she is the cause of all of the woe. Kind of also alleviating himself of the fact that he tricked her to begin with. From the speaker, gloomily, Gunnar turned. For the jewel bearer, her gems was dividing. On all her wealth, her eyes were gazing. On the bondwoman slain and the slaughtered slaves, her byrnie of gold she donned and grim. Was her heart ere the point of her sword had pierced it. On the pillow at last she laid, and wounded her plan she pondered over. So here is where it's, in essence, speaking of Brynhild commits suicide. She slakes her own life. In an essence, perhaps the overall plan was to alleviate Sigurd from marriage through death, and then she would in turn take her own life, and then they would be together in the afterlife. And that's like a whole nother level of the fury that this woman is. The idea too is of the serfs and the slaves that were killed. This, of course, is alluding to the funeral pyre that is erected to her as royalty, and of course, these practices of the seamless view that life and the afterlife were in congruence with each other in such a palpable way. This is, of course, very much a tradition in all lands amongst all peoples, but it also really does denote how in the time and in the place our ancestors experienced things. And I think it was because life was brutal, war was brutal, life was short, and sickness was more common than anything. So there is very much, whenever we read about our ancestors and the way that they dealt with the concepts of life and the afterlife, it was that there was no separation between the two, but that they were so immediate and visceral. But that's mentioned in one of the other following or poems that we've already covered. I eludes me as to which one but that's what that mentions. And it also kind of gives a glimpse that the poem and the poet here had absolute access to those poems and is referencing them. So in 48, was her heart ere the point of her sword had pierced it, on the pillow at last her head she laid, and wounded her plan she pondered over. Hither I will that my women come, who gold are fain from me to get. Necklaces fashioned fair to each shall I give, and clothing and garments bright. Silent were all as so she spake, and all together answer made, slain are enough. We seek to live. Not thus thy women shall honor win. So enough of the death, and there is no honor in these treacheries. Now it says here too in the notes, I thought was very interesting. Brynhild means in stanzas 50 to 52 that those of her women who wish to win rewards must be ready to follow her in death. And again, this does really denote more of a continental pre-migration Germanic practices, more so than the late Nordic period, except maybe in rare and smaller cases. But in 51, she says, long the woman, linen decked, pondered. Young she was, and weighed her words. For my sake now shall none unwilling or loath to die her life lay down. But little of gems to gleam on your limbs ye then shall find when forth ye fare to follow me, or of Menya's wealth. And Menya's wealth is a kenning for gold. The giant or the Jotunist Menya ground gold down into dust for King Frodi. So it's just a kenning for gold. Sit now, Gunnar, for I shall speak of thy bride so fair and so fain to die. Thy ship in harbor home thou hast not, although my life I now have lost. Thou shalt Gudrun requite, more quick than thou thinkest. Though sadly mourns the maiden wise, who dwells with the king over her husband dead. A maid shall then the mother bear, brighter far than the fairest day. Svanhild shall be, or the beams of the sun. So she says to her brother, bear this in mind, your sister is pregnant. They have a son, but soon they will have a daughter, and her name shall be the Swan of Battle, and she will be fairer of skin than the beams of the sun. So she will be of light countenance and brighter still. So she's kind of prophesizing this. Gudrun, a noble husband thou givest, yet to many a warrior woe will she bring. Not happily wedded, she holds herself. Hers shall Atli hither seek, Buthli's son and brother of mine. So Buthli is Atli and Brynhild's father. That clarifies some things for me. In essence, when she was speaking about Atli taking all of the wealth and lands and wedding her off, that was part of his plan, was to wed her off so that he could take her inheritance. And now Gudrun will be sought after by her brother. So she, again, still prophesizing the future that she will not see because she has a sword in her heart. Well, I remember how me ye treated when ye betrayed me with treacherous wiles. Lost was my joy as long as I lived. Audrun as wife thou fain wouldst win, but Atli this from thee withholds. Yet in secret tryst ye twain shall love. She shall hold thee dear as I had done, if kindly fate to us had fallen. So she says that Atli married me off to get my inheritance, but in secret it is Audrun who truly had an eye for him long ago, and that she will seek to be his after Brynhild dies. And and she will look more kindly upon him, as she would have done if there wasn't all this treachery. But ill to thee shall Atli bring when he cast thee down in a den of snakes. But soon thereafter Atli too his life, methinks, as thou shall lose, his fortune lose, and the lives of his sons. Him shall Gudrun, grim of heart, with a biting blade in his bed destroy. So she says that her brother will, even though Oddrun and Gunnar will be together after she dies, Atli will not have it and will smite him by throwing him into a den of snakes, most likely to get his lands and his treasures. But it is after that her brother Gudrun, who is currently mourning for the death of Sigurd, will stab Atli in his heart in revenge. So this kind of all supersedes as she is dying from her self-inflicted wound. She gives lay of the rest of the story in a very swift but super beautifully written and concise prose. It would better beseem thy sister fair to follow her husband first in death, if counsel good to her were given, or a heart akin to mine she had. So it would be better, she thinks, that Gudrun actually die after Sigurd if she was given good counsel, or if she had the same fervor as me. But she knows that's not the case, that her fate to slay Atli is yet undone. Slowly I speak for my sake. Her life, methinks, she shall not lose. She shall wander over the tossing waves to where Yonak rules his father's realm. Sons to him she shall bear, heirs therewith of Yonak's wealth. But Svanhild far away is sent, the child she bore to Sigurd brave. Bicki's word her death shall be, for dreadful the wrath of Jormungandr. So slain is all of Sigurd's race, and great the woe of Gudrun grows. So she will send the daughter that's in her belly away, and eventually she will be married to the Visigoth Ermanaric. And she is later in that story accused of unfaithfulness and is trampled under horses. And that is the last of Sigurd's race. And Gudrun will be across the waves. So I'm assuming perhaps the Baltic. But it says here in the notes, Yannick, this king is only known through the Hamthesmal, and the stories which, like this one, are based thereon, is another purely northern addition to the story. The name is apparently of Slavic origin. He appears solely as Gudrun's third husband. So not much given on that. Perhaps over the waves too could mean the Black Sea. But she goes there to live with Yonak and finds out that her daughter, who marries the Gothic king, is slain. And she's alive to hear it. So again, more woe comes to her heart. In 65, yet one boon I beg of thee, the last of boons in my life it is. Let the pyre be built so broad in the field that room for us all will ample be, for us who slain with Sigurd are. So she says, I ask you one thing. Place the pyre of Sigurd abreast and connected so broad and wide, that my pyre and the pyre of my servants who come with me connects to Sigurd's. With shields and carpets cover the pyre, shrouds full fair and the fallen slaves, and beside the Hunnish hero burn me. Beside the Hunnish hero there, slaves shall burn, fully bravely decked, 2 at his head, 2 at his feet, a brace of hounds and a pair of hawks, for so shall all be seemly done. Let between us lie once more the steel so keen, as so it lay when both within one bed we once were, and wedded mates by men were called. The door of the hall shall strike not the heel of the hero fair with flashing rings, if hence my following goes with him. Not mean our faring forth shall be. Bondwomen 5 shall follow him, and 8 of my thralls well born are they. Children with me, and mine they were, as gifts that Boothly his daughter gave. Much have I told thee, and more would I say, if fate nor space for speech I had been given. My voice grows weak, and my wounds are swelling. Truth I have said, and so I die. God, that's so good. I'm sorry if my interjection. I'm trying to step in between the verses to explain to people kind of the gist of things. But when I just get a chance to roll with it, this is such a good poem.
This one is extremely well written and very well translated. It's awesome. It's awesome.
This is so good. I just would recommend anybody who's listening, if they're listening via audio or whatever, please at some point get to volustball.org and definitely just get a chance to kind of read through it. It's just so good.
It really, really is.
And that's it. That's the entirety of the poem. I really do. I think at the end of the Volsunga saga, I really kind of wish this was the next one read. Kind of another broaching point, but it also kind of brought us back to all the tragedy of the whole thing. After Fafnir's Maul, the dragon, the smith who smiths Sigurd's sword, we learn all of that stuff, and then we all get to come back to this beauty of why all the just terrible stuff was happening. Very, very tragic story.
But now it's me.
It is. This one is just, yes, it is short, but the way it's written is so impactful. It's visceral, and it's just really well done. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I kind of want to, utilize this more and see if I can't mimic its style for bloat in deference to the gods. Like, I don't know. Something about it just really, really good.
No, this one is. There's some that have like a really cool turn of phrase here or there. This one is really, really solid the entire way through, and I'm really excited we got to read it together tonight. So I have a couple of questions. Not a ton tonight, but we do have a couple of questions to get to. Why did the gods think, what did the gods think of Vikings going on raids and killing their own people? What changed that this is no longer acceptable in modern Asatru? Svan, what are your thoughts?
Well, we kind of had a conversation about that a little while ago. I know that there's a kind of common phrase of no more brother wars, but it's worth noting that when our folk were in different tribes and different groups, we fought each other and we praised the gods for victory. So this crucible time in our history made us greatly who we are. So much so it actually even defined Christianity in a great sense, because it wasn't until the warrior spirit of Europe was in essence kind of harnessed or led about to different means by this foreign religion, but that you can wholly see it is not a part of the church before. It's when it gets into the heart of Germanic Europe that the knight, the warrior, that all shows up again. But this time that's another step in, I think, the evolution of our folk. We were in a crucible time of fighting each other, and that was normal and natural. Everyone all over does that. But then as time grew on and the land and the horizons got broader, the reasonings for that became to question. And I think that now a lot of people will try to use a singular time, Iron Age, late Nordic period, or the Viking Age, and say, oh, well, they enslaved, other white people or other European people or what have you. Not a great look for somebody who is so concerned about the ethnicity or what have you. And that's not as big of an own as I think they think it is. But the reality is that our ancestors adapted to their times as they did. There was huge advancements in war. There were huge advancements in travel, but there was not a lot of land. There were population booms, etc. There's lots of different conditions that we can look at that brought us to fighting each other. And the Norse did not fight the Anglo-Saxons because they were Christian. They fought the Anglo-Saxons because they wanted their land on the eastern side of the island. But as we go, the idea of homogeneity amongst our culture, amongst our religion, amongst our folk has become an issue because we are faced with certain things that our ancestors were clearly not faced with. When it comes to politics, it's kind of like saying, if you don't believe in monarchies, are you really Asatru? Because all our ancestors believed in kings. But again, these kings are clearly different than the Christendom kings, but the Christendom king isn't separate from the Jarl kings or the kings of the Viking Age. No, they're like a hyper focusing of it. This is just all part of the evolution of things. And the gods have always been concerned with us governing ourselves. It's not about whether we are kings or tribal or what have you. The gods just want us. I mean, Lord Forseti guides us in governing ourselves, but to which way, I think, is a matter of dispute. And so sometimes that means we fight about it. And the gods have seen us do this forever, since they breathed on into us. So I don't think that it's forbidden now, nor is it something that we necessarily have to link ourselves to because of the past. They were of the time and we are of our time. And so the gods, I think, wish to see us return to them and live in accordance with what is best for us in this day and age, just as they did then.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to break this fascination that Asatru equals Vikings. It doesn't. And that is an honest association. The lore that we read comes to us from the Viking Age. The picture painted of our gods is painted with a Viking coat of paint. I get that. But our gods are real, living, existent gods that have been with us it's just as appropriate to have Neolithic depiction of our gods or the furthest, spacefaring depiction of our gods. Our gods are our gods. And we put those in the lens that we can rationalize and helps us to relate to them. And for a particularly beautiful golden age of literacy amongst our folk, it was put down in a early medieval understanding of the Viking Age. I get that. But every war that our ancestors were in until the 1700s, barring the Crusades, were brother wars, in the broadest extension of that. So I think there's big macro geopolitical concerns that are relevant to our faith that weren't relevant at the time that our lore was written down. What do the gods think of all of these things? I think it would be impious to say with certainty exactly what they think, because that's not to know. But what they did think that I do stand on, they admired courage. They admired will to power. They admired nobility in action. And they admired the hero, and they backed the hero quite often. Most of the heroes that are celebrated in our saga and in story are, made their bones, as it were, in brother wars. That's what folks did. You have a group of concentric circles that go out from you and your family and your broader family and your ethnos and your race. And there's these broader circles, and we live in a really different time where things look very differently. Yes, when we're surrounded by people that are completely dissimilar forms of life than us, then yes, we bond over a very broad race of Aryan peoples. When our world is much smaller and it's competing groups of people that all have a similar race, then we bond over issues or over regionality or over certain things. I think our gods have always supported and had a special place for the warriors and the heroes and those who stepped up to be powerful forces within the world in which they lived. And I think that looks different at different times. It would be preposterous for us to try to pretend we are Vikings and behave as Vikings. We live in a very different world than the Vikings lived in. I think in a lot of ways, the Vikings would have gladly traded that in to have the convenience and modern things that we have in our world today around us. And they wouldn't have had a need to travel to foreign lands or even close by lands to raid and to pillage and to plunder. I think our ancestors, we look at the Viking Age as if it was all Scandinavian people were engaged in raiding and pillaging. No, there was, depending on where you're at, there are a lot of people engaged in trade and in, fishing and in, if they had land that they could work in crops and in herds, just depended where you found themselves. But coastal Norwegian Vikings that didn't have land that was very fruitful to put crops in had to take care of their family the way they knew how. And there was a geopolitical incursion of Christian nations at the time. There's a lot of things that went into the geopolitics of the Viking Age. But again, the whats and the hows are very determined by circumstance. The whys are very different. The whys speak to the soul of our folk, and they speak to Asatru. And I think the whys remain the same in a lot of ways. But we're all going to apply our life, our efforts, and our resources in different ways depending on the hand we're dealt and what we're dealing with. And the world we live in today is very different than, 750 in I don't know, in Oslo Fjord. So it looks really different. But no, I don't think the celebration of the death of Aryan peoples is good. I don't think that's an objective on the table good. But I do think that the rise of heroes and the success of the bold in bold endeavors has always been celebrated by our gods and remains so to this day. But that's the best of my understanding of it. Like I said, I don't think there's a perfect answer. You'd have to say, what do they think of this particular Viking in this particular raid? And I might have more to contribute on it. But yeah, I think we need to disabuse ourselves of Asatru equals Viking, because it's much more than that. And that's one of the things that I'm very proud of about the AFA and how we practice our faith is we're modern people unabashedly living in the modern world. And I think anything less would be silly and inappropriate to the legacy that our ancestors gave us. Next question, which is an interesting one. Good evening, Alsheri Gothi, Matt, Witan Svan, and Folk Builder Nick. I have a question about the proper usage of the word for our gods and goddesses. I know that the Asinur are strictly female, but that the Aesir strictly male. But are the Aesir strictly male? If I wanted to include both male and female, do I use Ausa? Is Ausa plural? Can it be used singularly? I see that there are the main 12 Aesir, but are there any minor Aesir? For example, is Hodr an Aesir? Same question for the Ausinur. Are there any minor Ausinur? Are there the maidens of Finseller Ausinur? What about the wives of the Aesir like Sif and Nana? Thanks for all that you do. Svan, go ahead and take a swing at this one.
Okay, so one of the big things that has been kind of prevalent in anybody who is taking a swing at trying to, I guess, define hierarchy. But they come at it from a different angle. One, they'll generally speak of the gods as the total, with both the Aus and Ausinur as the Aesir, the gods. But they have a tendency to get a little shaky when it comes to explaining outside of the Gylfaginning where to go from there. And you'll see books where there are titles like the Jotun brides or the troll wives or what have you when they're speaking outside of the core list. But for the Asatru Folk Assembly, the idea was to be reverent and observational on the hierarchy that comes to us and has survived. So the first and foremost is the Gylfaginning as a setting of standard in relation to the list. King Galfi comes before three gods. I can speak at length about the tripartite, but in short, he comes before the tripartite. And he asks the tripartite about whom the gods that men should pray to. And that is a very key wording that we focused in on. In the list of the Aus or gods, the masculine divine beings, he lists technically 14, but that 2 are not worshipped amongst men. So there are 12. And then when he speaks of the Ausinur, there are 14. So 14 and 14, but 2 are marked off. That's just something that I think a lot of people don't ever really think about. Of course, the 2 that are marked off is, of course, the Kinslayer, Laufey's son, Loki, and then also, too, his blind tool, his blind hand, that which is, of course, Hallur. Hallur is specifically mentioned as he is not celebrated or prayed to by those who are true to the gods. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's hated. I mean, clearly Loki is the deserver of that onus, but the act itself is still laid upon the hand that did the deed. But that's why when we look at the Gylfaginning, there are 12 and 14 goddesses. Now, the 14 goddesses, a lot of people would read the list and go, well, wait a minute, what about Sif? Sif is clearly mentioned. What about Idun? And so when we were kind of coming up with an understanding for hierarchy, the idea was, okay, we clearly know that Sif is of the gods. She is the wife of Thor. The interrelationship of her placement and the stratification of the earth is very, very prominent when it comes to all of the, especially the Austvanir. Well, or again, we didn't have that word. What we had was just like the others that weren't mentioned in the list. And I looked at a bunch of other different books, and I looked at a bunch of different writers and the way that they were kind of saying troll wives. That seemed, troll has definitely a negative connotation in our ancestors' lore. So I thought that was very inappropriate. And then Jotun brides. I think that one was chosen because those people were trying to desperately make a claim that the gods were mixing with another people in a way. And they tried to paint the Jotuns as the others. And again, this doesn't necessarily work out in its entirety, because once you know how the Jotuns and the Aesir are of the same origin, but are unique on their own, the Aesir split off, you begin to look at it more like, yes, okay, it's the purpose and the culture and the focus of the divine. So we generally always shape this into chaos and order, and that the Aesir are of order, natural order, not a fake order, but a natural order, and cosmic order, something eternal. And it's not long before the gods of natural law, the Vanir, are brought under their dominion through war, but they come to an agreement together. And then on top of this, there are Jotuns who are in the chaos, who decide not to and join the gods, whether in marriage, whether in birth of a new divine being through their coupling together, or through simple act at first. So with all of that being said, the marriage, the coupling, the aid, those leaving the realm of chaos join the gods. Now, Snorri would list them as, he would say, they're Jotuns. And in actuality, I think if he didn't fully understand where his ancestors might have listed the divine, he had a tendency to put Jotun as the title. I used to joke and say it was kind of like the slap on tape. Don't know what it is? Jotun. But we clearly know that Jorth amongst the Norse and Nerthus amongst the Germanics, and she was worshipped. There was a clear understanding that there was a slight gap because of his of the separation from the religion via Christianity. So the term Austvanir was brought into being through really it was me and Asatru like going over words, Nordic words, and just learning Nordic words and looking for Nordic words for certain things. So I went off and started to look, and I found Ástvinir, and it means like most beloved friend or lover. It fits the entirety. So I found that to be, it was almost prophetic in the way that it came, because I was looking for something, and then what caught my eye was the Aus beginning. And I was like, wait a minute, these are the most beloved of the gods, and they are of the gods. So with that being said, you have the Aesir are the gods in total. The Aus are the 12 masculine divine set in the Gylfaginning by the tripartite to King Galfi. 14 Ausinir, and they are, again, regents of their own. In an essence, though, you can kind of see this. The way they're portrayed in the Nordic sense is that there is Holy Frigg and Holy Freya, and that the maidens of Fensal are kind of orbiting Holy Frigg, and then Holy Freya is kind of a power unto her own. And if that's, we see now, like in modern Asatru, the maidens of Fensal are often called upon when or with Holy Frigg, but sometimes on their own. And so where that goes, I think that's more of a cultural thing as we go forward. But it seems to be at that time, that's how they were presented. So the Ástvinir became the word that I found in relation to the beloved ones that are not specifically listed in the Gylfaginning. And its title is honorific instead of kind of, all the other words that I've seen in these books giving these great and powerful beings that decide to join on the side of order. So lastly, there is the Himmin Verner, the heavenly wardens. And this was, in essence, an observation of the hierarchy of the gods and heavens in a, again, observing sense with piety. And so I would say that all of the Aesir are all four of these subgroups connected together. Now, it gets even a little bit more convoluted, but it's worth noting that Ástvinir can also extend to folks who perhaps have honorific beliefs in gods that are not listed in the Nordic remnants that we have. And it's generally seen as, the whether they, there could be a possibility that they're honor or deified mortals. We don't know. We will never know. So it is best to be polite and call them of the divine. So like I speak like of Saxnot. We know that Saxnot was honored by the Saxons, and they held Saxnot as a god. And instead of us having the hubris to say, oh, Saxnot's actually Tyr, Saxnot's actually Frey, that is the biggest hip shot, most egotistical garbage that a person of true faith would never do. So the Ástvinir that are of, like, say, for instance, Saxnot. I do not honor Saxnot in any of my day-to-days, but if I meet a folk member who does, he is honoring an Ástvinir, one of the gods brought in, and simply the fact that we are crossing this giant chasm of having our religion gored completely out by the usury and the politics and the wars of a foreign organized, quite criminalistically organized church. We are doing what is, we think, is best, and that is to be humble and honorific to divine and to understand that the gods are and can be more. They unify and create more. But this also brings me to one last thing. Not only do we have that, there are those mentioned in the lore that most people don't consider Austvanir, and I would encourage people to. For instance, again, I said marriage, birth, and ideologically joining the gods of order. And we see it in the stories. It's just not spoken of openly. But a perfect example of this would be that of Gríðr. Gríðr is, I write about her in the runes on the mural at Thorshof. And if anybody who's been to Thorshof has seen that he carries an iron rod in his belt. Now, in the stories, it's generally translated to be like a staff, like an iron, maybe quarterstaff or something. But I had always seen it as the substitute of Mjolnir at a time when he did not have Mjolnir, and Gríðr gives him the iron rod. So I just kind of kept it within the same size and shape, just out of, I guess, parallelism. But she gives him this rod to fight the Jotnar that are after him. And then she is, of course, the mother of Vidar, the wide ruler. So not only does she help Thor, she gives birth to one of our holy gods. And she is a part of the earth. So I would say, again, the chaos of the earth being subdued is a continuous point about the gods and the earth, that the cosmic order of the sky brings into balance the chaos of the earth. If we look at the seismographic and climate data, you can see this kind of moment where everything gets brought into a far less unstable situation than it has ever been before. And so Gríðr joins, I think, and I consider her amongst the Aesir. And I know this is going to be controversial as well. And I do not speak of her lightly because I do not wish to invite her in the sense that I just don't wish to invite. But even she who is the shroud of death, the daughter of the betrayer, who shepherds the souls of men, is given her dominion by Lord Odin. And I would include her in that list as an Austvanir. Now, that could come with some debate, and that's perfectly fine. But the biggest point of this is that our people didn't ever have really a clear and correspondent way to make sense of everything. And we, at the Asatru Folk Assembly, took that leap into the correct way, looking at everyone else and seeing some of these kind of misguided attempts and different reasons, and we said no. This is as we observe it, and this is solid. And again, there is significance in the number 4 being solid. There's a reason why the Fifot, or the swastika, has 4 arms. It is solid but moving. It is stable but powerful. And so that was kind of the overarching reason. So the Aesir are these 4 kind of categories, and it is adaptable and by no means set except for that which was spoken in the Gylfaginning.
Just so I make sure it's clear. So the Aesir are masculine, the Austvanir are feminine, but if you've got a mixed group, it's Aesir too.
Yes, it's like mankind.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, mankind. Perfect example of that. Yeah. And then the Austvanir are those that are beloved and have joined. They are of the gods. But they are not explicitly spoken of in the Gylfaginning, but they are there. We know Sif is of the gods. She is a beloved one. And whether or not we know origin, the general thought is that Sif and Uller are of the Vanir, and that somehow that was lost. But even people have speculated, oh, she's a Leo Salvar or what. We don't know, because by the time our lore was written down, it was written down in Poetics, and if it didn't fit with Poetics, it wasn't brought up.
So we could, that's the thing. We could endlessly go over the possibilities of small, little known deities that are localized or that have small cults here and there in these other places. It was and is necessary for us to select, boom, this is what we do. This is why we do it. That's a beginning. It's not an end. And I think that's an important way to look at it. And I think that as we erect Hoffs, as we acquire Hoffs, as we continue the gift cycle with the Aesir, we will have insights that we do not have currently to help us understand and direct our worship and build relationships with the gods in the best ways, in increasingly better ways. But yeah, what Svan said, I think he covered it pretty comprehensively. I'm going to skip the line here. We've got another couple of questions, but this one just kind of came out. The White Hebrew Israelite asks, are you guys pro World War II German? So I just want to say this. That question seems kind of glowy, I think, that the kids would say, or whatever. But no, I'm just going to put it out there. I am absolutely in awe of and have tremendous respect for all of the brave men of our folk who fought in that conflict. I don't think it's beneficial to try to adjudicate the geopolitics of, 1938 or 1941. But yes, I absolutely honor all of the men of our folk who fought bravely. And that includes the brave men of the Waffen-SS, the Wehrmacht, the Kriegsmarine, and the Luftwaffe, and unabashedly so. Yeah. World War II cost us as a people tremendously. A lot of lives were lost. And it was also a time of heroes and a time of amazing and men of tremendous character. And I think you found those in the armed forces of all the different nations involved in that. And you found those in large measure in the German armed forces then. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise.
Well, and there's a clear demonization of one singular facet of that conflict. And, that's a better question is why one group is honored or even just left alone despite all of its similar, if not worse, issues, and one is demonized. But I was just talking about this today. At the fall of the monarchies, there were the merchants, the soldiers, and the serfs all fighting for the destiny and the futures of their nations. And the communists are, of course, the proletariat, the serfs. And we know what happens when they get into power. The merchants, of course, the West, the Anglosphere in particular, and all the remnants of the colonies under the crown. And then you have the soldierly kind of Central Europeans and Northern Europeans, because a lot of people forget about the nationalist movements in France and Spain and Belgium and Denmark and Sweden and Norway and so on and so forth. But every nation was at an instantaneous, knives out between the merchants, the serfs, and the soldiers. And the soldiers had just come out of fighting a war that they didn't necessarily believe in in relation to World War I, and it had changed things for forever. And they were very upset when the communists started burning things down, like when they burned down Berlin in 1931, and they created the Free Corps, these veterans going through and just fighting these communists who were burning down the capital city that they fought so hard to defend. And we see this kind of happening all over at that time. You know, we kind of more or less gloss over the evils of communism, but yet are very, very quick to praise the Finns for making sure, you know, that they don't come into Finland.
I think we get that there's a lot of things in play there. But no, I'm going to celebrate the heroes of our folk. And
it doesn't matter who they are.
And I'm going to appreciate that bravery. And I'm not going to be put in a box to not do that. So are Neanderthals white? And can we hail our Neanderthal ancestors? Is a question that comes up. We're getting weekly art. Is this whatever white from a similar audience? And I'm keep them coming. I'm not opposed to that. It's just fun to get that question every week. Are Neanderthals white, Svan?
Well, okay, so Kvartsedu. It's so funny. I can hear it, and I'm like, oh, it shocks me. So, you know, when we talk about parallel, you know, hominid, Homo branches, whether it's Homo habilis or the Neanderthalis and what have you, we clearly see that there's these integrations genetically between different groups, that every peoples that are alive today are carrying around the genes of a parallel group that they either kind of sprung from or were living next to, and so on and so forth. And I think it's a false narrative for everyone to think that you know, we come from one group of humans and they are the original people or what have you. Obviously, spiritually too, I believe that there is a multi design, intelligent and multiplied. But when it comes to the fact that if we just look at scientifically, our ancestors in Europe did mix with Neanderthals and Neanderthal genetics. I would, and again, I'm not like a you know, a studier of this level of biology to a point where I'm anywhere near an expert. But one of the things that's worth noting is that people of that climb, our very adaptation to being able to take the sun's rays and turn it immediately into the life-giving things that we need. We are not resistant to the light. We are hypersensitive to it. I would say it would probably be in good mind to consider that the Neanderthal too were as well having this adaptation of being able to convert sunlight immediately into the wealth and the nourishment that our bodies need. And that is probably coupling with that adaptation that was already there with our Homo sapiens that lived in parallel with the Neanderthals. I think that adaptation is being nibbled at in order to, you know, they kind of depict Homo sapiens going into Europe as being darker, like they just kind of just all of a sudden came over. But we have, looking at the parallels of the Europeans looking at the fact that there are also the westward expansion of the central Caucasus and the Araya people as they move in different directions, and how they kind of come over in waves throughout the Stone Age and then Bronze Age, and then lastly the Iron Age. That adaptation was already fully set in. So I would say it wouldn't be too far off the mark. But again, I'm not an expert in those things. And
I would say Neanderthals are proto-white. I think they are unique in their interactions with our folk versus different groups of people, and I think you see that borne out. If you knew the name of one of your Neanderthal ancestors, then I think raising a horn to them probably be okay. I highly doubt that you do, so I think that's kind of speculative, but it is interesting. Yes, I think that they are unique to the biological formulation of our race in particular. And so in that way, I don't think it fits. It's hard to go to a different species of proto-human and then try to put them in a, Mongoloid, Caucasoid, Negroid matrix of race. I don't think it quite works that way, but I would say if I had to relate them to that, I would say they are proto-white, for whatever that's worth. We're getting more glowiness in here, but I open the door. So here's the thing. I don't want to not be honest on stuff. We all know the world that we live in and where we're at. What I also don't want to do is bog the AFA down in things that there's no context for and that people just want to use as clubs to beat you with, because there's no sense in it. It's just not useful. So next question. What are some things you wish you would have done differently or would have done sooner in your Asatru journey? Svan, what are some things in your pursuit of Asatru you wish you did different or you wish you did sooner?
Oh, I mean, this is super easy for me. And you are not burdened, I do not believe, by this folly, but yeah, I really wish that I understood the significance of ethnos in relation to religion. I came about to my faith because of coming from Iceland. And so it intrinsically tied me to this divine and expression of religion that was dastardly tried to be subverted and wasn't super successful until far, far later than we are told. But finding that out immediately connected me. And then once I realized that it wasn't just a Norse thing, it wasn't just an Icelandic thing, that it went farther, and that the days of the weeks, the names of the days of the week in Anglo-Saxon and even in the Central are named after our gods. And that it goes all the way back to really when there was, in essence, kind of 4 core religions. And that then finding out later that these 4 core religions are, in essence, cultural expressions of the same divine beings, it just blew my mind. And I took way too long to get there. I really... I have seen people utilize our faith and our divine gods for political motivations or to scare people that they have absolutely no connection to. And then on top of that, I didn't realize like how lackadaisical I looked at other people's religions and how much I should have given reverence to their ethnos. When I was in high school, I actually followed around a dance troupe of Native Americans, both of the 5
It's called stalking, Svan.
What's that?
That's called stalking.
just behind the tree, like, you guys got some feathers there? No, sorry. So, no, I went out and I was particularly attracted to the Five Nation and the Seneca tribes. They did not focus so much on dancing as they did like a dancing and storytelling. And I, of course, have always been into storytelling. So I gravitated there, but I also met some of the more Western style natives, Lakota and Blackfoot and so on. And just did a huge piece on them, and even learned a horse stealing song. When they stole a horse from a rival tribe, they would come back and sing a song in celebration. And I know that song. I like completely memorized it. I will not sing it now though. But anyways, they this time I was just interested in learning. I wasn't attempting to be, I think a lot of people who are at loss with the true important ethnic connection that they have, because Christianity is just a subsect of Judaism. It has European veins kind of ingrained in it, but those are, you dig deep enough and you realize it's not us anymore. And we, you hear Christians really jumping through hoops to try to make it their own. And again, Christian identity, guys. We was the lost tribe of Israel.
Jews.
Yes. Anyways, and I'm not trying to get into a flame war with somebody on the chat or anything, but
just in case, we was not.
Yeah, we was not the lost tribe of Jews.
We was not Jews.
But I suddenly and later on, so the one thing that I wish I had done was understand that importance, because I think I would have really began to understand the stories of the Seneca storyteller and the way that he described things and how intrinsically important it is that we connect. I mean, Christianity says it's universal, but again, you got Korean Jesus, you got Black Jesus, you got Japanese Jesus.
Korean Jesus is the most swole, though.
Yes, and he's a beast. But good on the Koreans. But even Arabic and Islam, yeah, sure, you can take Islam and be from Malaysia, but you're going to learn Arabic and you're going to learn cultural norms. So the globalist sense, it ultimately boils down to kind of hearkening back to a culture, and Christianity has a great amount of European culture in it. But alas, after Saul and Simon coming into Greece, before that moment, it's not European, and there's no way of getting around that. So I think one of the things is that just learning how important ethnos is into divinity and expression of divinity and faith and religion, it completed the final rift for me. It put everything into perspective, not just for myself, but the way that I saw everyone else. And it made me respect faiths a lot more. When I was in the Marine Corps, I had the joy of having a fairly good friend who was a Ghanaian African, like, folkish practitioner who was seeking to return back to his ancestral honorings, and we were on a common ground. But even then, I didn't fully understand it until later, and I think that was more out of a negative sense. I met someone who I eventually felt like what they were doing was utilizing the faith of my people in order to kind of be edgy or scary. And that's when suddenly I realized it's so important, because this should not be done. And that was my biggest mistake, is just kind of finally solidifying that so far late in my faith, but
Du
is as it is.
have rätt. Svan Isländinger, jag bandarisker. So
yes, I am half.
Svan being an Icelander, he was not enriched in his earliest days. I suffered a lot of enrichment growing up.
A lot of people wouldn't know that about Alaska. The enrichment there.
Little known fact. No, Anchorage is, at one time, it was the most diverse city in America because of the number of different. So it was a melting pot of things. We had our proximity to Asia. We always had a substantial Asian population, decent like Korean population, Japanese population, but also we imported a number of Hmong folks after the Vietnam War. So we had a lot of like Laotian folks as well there. There were Inuit and Athabascan peoples. Anchorage was next to Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, which was Elmendorf Air Force Base and Fort Richardson when I grew up. Again, you get a decent number of blacks that come through there. You had a big Polynesian population that I heard came there from one Samoan Crip back in the 70s selling coke up there during the pipeline days. But he brought all of his like Polynesian family up there with him progressively over the years. And so we had a very big Polynesian population. There was a lot of enrichment growing up. Certainly not as bad as some places, but
yeah, whereas
enough to where very early in my life I learned the difference between there's us and there's them, and there's things there to be concerned about. So I was very aware of that early on, and still am. On my end, stuff I wish I would have done sooner seems very obvious in hindsight. I wish I would have immediately joined the Asatru Folk Assembly in 2001. As it is, I waited until 2009 to join. I was one of those like pretended I was a member of the AFA, like I'm in the AFA orbit, but I didn't really contribute and be part of the team for like 8 years there. And that was 8 years that I could have been actually part of the team, and I wish it was. I wish when I first got started that I had a greater degree of respect for my elders. And it makes me take a moment and extend a little bit of grace to some of our newer people. When I was in my 20s, I knew exactly how this should be. Why isn't everybody else doing this the way that in my head I imagined with very little information that this ought to be done? And, I came full of enthusiasm and just knowing the right way to do everything, because you know everything when you're a 20-something male and you got testosterone flowing through you and you got the will to power. You know all the right ways to do everything, and I think everybody feels that way. And spoiler alert, I did not know everything. There were lots of things looking back. I'm like, man, that's embarrassing and stupid. But I don't know how I would have told my younger self that. And I say that it wasn't a big crisis or controversy, but I wish I would have listened more and been a bit more respectful to my elders when I first started out. Certainly wish I would have gotten involved in the AFA earlier. it's hard because you don't want to replay the hand if you're happy with where you're at, because any number of things would have gone differently. But yeah, I think those are some of the things. I had this big tent, let's all get along attitude when I started. And no, I've learned that everybody needs to be under one banner with, one leader running things. You need to be on the team. This let's all work together thing doesn't make a lot of progress. It sounds good in theory, but the way forward really is for everybody to absolutely come together, but you come together under one team, one banner, and under a leader, and you move forward that way. And I figured that out, but I wish I would have figured it out, 7 or 8 years before I really did, or I really internalized it. There's any number of members and people that because there are a lot of marginal people that have found their way into our circles over the years. I mean, I could look back on anybody who proved not to be worth the trust or the love I put in them, and I would have done that different. But I think any of us that make it to our mid-40s have a list of people that we would have not trusted or not extended love or friendship or brotherhood to if we'd have known then what we know now. And I think that's just life. I think we don't make it through that unscathed. So we probably all have a list of that. But, mainly those things. I wish I would have stuck with trying to learn Icelandic / Old Norse earlier on, because as I've said before, this is like my 5th serious attempt at it, and the other ones failed. So I probably I'd be much further ahead if I would have done that earlier. Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard because if we're honest, there's a bunch of things I would have recast or done differently, but I'm happy with where they eventually led. There's a couple key people that I wish I would have known what they were struggling with at the time, and I could have proactively counseled them in a different way and maybe help them to a different outcome in their life. I would certainly try to do those things differently. Certainly as a Gothi, there's people that if I knew what I know now of things they were dealing with, I would have been able to help them better than I've been able to help them. I think that's real. But I think, I think that hindsight's always 20 and there's 2020, and there's always, we're not being honest if we wouldn't diagnose a number of things that we would have done differently or wish we would have known. So I think there's that. I don't think I had a whole lot of huge missteps. I just wish I would have found the things that are the most perfect. Obviously I wish I would have found them sooner. But no, I've been very blessed in where my, quote unquote, Asatru journey has taken me thus far. I'm very, very fortunate with that. Next question. This is from Tyler Svan. Since I'm in your district now that I've joined the AFA, where do I go from here? Recommended next steps. So what do you say to our newest members, Svan?
Well, I would definitely say reach out to your closest folk builder just as a connection hub, or the other point is that you could reach out to Gothar, which would include me, or Witan Young or Givya Young. I think that would eventually, it would be good, but we would try to get you to work with the closest people and then try to get you to find ways to meet up with folks, and ultimately to see what the logistics would be like for you to get to a Hof, or kindred members of and kindreds nearby, or just groups of folks that are honoring the gods, not only on the holy tides at the Hof, but in your local area. And if there isn't, what distance to drive that is, compatible for people to meet with you and do things with you and guide you on these things, and then ultimately to encourage you to start formulating things in your area on your own as well, because that's how we get bigger, is with every person joining, we light the torch. And sometimes you'll kind of be off in a backwater area, and it's like, oh, it takes me a couple hours to get to the Hof. That's okay. It takes me a couple of hours to get to the Hof, but and we do it. But you start talking about it and looking around you, and all of a sudden there's people showing up. That was kind of the way it started here, in throughout the state of Virginia, was just looking and organizing. And sure enough, before we knew it, we had 3 distinct groups all interacting with each other as kind of one big kindred. But with the onset of the Hofs, I think kindreds are kind of taking a secondary position as more of like localized connectivity, but that the major connectivity where you get to meet other people and other kindreds and so on and so forth at these big hubs is the Hofs. And that's where I think our future lies, is going forward with this, because you'll find too, people locally can be very in and out, flaky. Some people start things because they've got a power trip in their head or something. So if you want to not be succumb to any of that, remember the church at large and the Hofs are the mainstay, and anyone or anything you organize with other people and what have you, those are for, again, local needs, but by no means are they the entirety of the faith of Asatru. The AFA, the church, the community, the Hofs, the national gatherings, that is where it's at. So kind of gear yourself in your mind for that, and we'll work all the little details between you and that together.
Doing a thing. Hold on one second.
So I imagine we'll be talking to each other soon. This is what I'm getting into.
Yeah, you should be. You certainly should be. So, a few things. And I think that we can get into hype. I just did some looking. I think we can get into hyper specifics for you individually if you want, privately, but your local folk builder should be reaching out to you very soon. You should absolutely look for things close to you. And I would say this also, states are funny shapes, so don't just look for your state. Any adjacent state, you may be close to a bordering area that has other stuff. You
like
are close
to coming up in 3 weeks. It's like 30 minutes away.
So there are a lot of options near you, and in your part of the world, you should definitely make the effort to go to those. As soon as I can get where I'm trying to go, I will probably be relatively close to you. You have a lot of activity near you. You should get involved best you can. And I know it's a little bit out of your way, but you should get to Thorshof when you can. And I think it'll be really special for you when you do. And it's not super far. I think you also should make the effort if you can. And we've got people you can carpool with. There's a lot of stuff to get up to a Phrasehof dedication if you can. I think all those things are good things I would advise. Certainly build a relationship with your local folk builder, and that will help you. reach out to the Gothar if you have questions or concerns, or if you need anything. Any of us would love to help you. Very seriously, reach out to me if you need anything. Matt Flavel at runestone.org goes to anybody listening to this. But you in specific, Tyler, I'm impressed that you stepped up and you joined today. You trusted me on the Walmart wine. You trusted me on joining the AFA. If you need anything seriously, let me know. I can get you connected with people, or I could help make some stuff happen for you. But you do live in a good area with a lot of stuff. Nothing on top of you, but a lot of stuff relatively close to you if you're willing to drive for a few hours here or there. You've got a lot of good options. So that's what I would suggest that you do. And our last question of the night, and again, we told you we're going to take all your questions. You can tell when I'm being delicate on a subject, and I think everybody knows why. I'm not, it is what it is. So what are your thoughts on Europa, The Last Battle, and similar films that tell the story of World War II from the politically incorrect perspective? Svan, do you have anything that you would like to add to this question? Because I kind of want to hit it with what I've got, and then
I think I'll be supplemental. You'll be the main focus of this answer. I'm just saying that I think that a lot of these medias that are being introduced, I think, are necessary. I think that we're at a stage right now where people think that Schindler's List is not a work of fiction, but in the book, clearly in the leaves of the book, it says that it is a work of fiction. There's a lot of stuff going on out there where I think, again, there's misinformation, there's so on and so forth, things that weren't or aren't being told. And if there are people out there who are willing to look through and dig in, and again, what's the author's name? Irvin. Is it Steve? No, it's not Stephen Irving. David Irving. And he was doing some interesting stuff, and he got demonized for it. I think at this point it is kind of, again, it's a measure of the freedom of speech to be able to lay out things and speak about them, whether they're true or not. Clearly, we have, fictitious writings being kind of lauded as truth. And a lot of people nowadays would absolutely think that's truthful. And that, I think that has the right to be made, but we need to be able to have all perspectives on things.
So, yeah, I kind of want to echo a lot of that. What I want to say is, first, I have not watched Europa, The Last Battle. We get people in here that plug that a lot. I've watched Greatest Story Never Told, which I assume is in a similar vein. I think it's really important, especially in the world we live in today. Don't just accept what you're fed as truth. Look into it. Look into things. And I think solid advice that has always been true, it is conspicuous that there's certain facts you're not allowed to question. I think those facts are the ones that probably require the most scrutiny and looking at. I think there's very few things in history you're not allowed to have an opposing view on or look into nuanced information on. And when you come up against something like that, there's probably reasons why that is. Freedom of thought, freedom of looking into facts for yourself, and verifying assertions and seeing whether they're true or not, and seeing whether there's counterpoints that are also true or not is a really important thing to do. think we're at a time where that's probably more important than anything else. We see all around us that we are not getting told the truth by a lot of people we trusted to tell us the truth. It's been a rough thing for me in my mid-40s to realize that a lot of the things that I, in good faith, got firmly behind earlier on in my life, I was lied to about by people I trusted, by sources that I trusted. And I think that's something that we face in a lot of things comprehensively across our lives. I don't think that the fix is relitigating the Second World War all the time. I do think for those that are curious and interested and want to look at the details of that, it's a fascinating thing to look into. But I don't think that that's the common ground where you're going to get other people to get on your team or not. So I don't think that needs to be your identity, but yeah, I think it is always in the very best traditions of our folk to take a critical look at things, to reevaluate often what you take as being true and confirm, is this true? Because here's the thing, everybody gets scared of it. No, if you're right, relook at it all the time, and it strengthens your faith in the thing you're righteous on. But if not, you catch yourself when you're not correct on something, and you can change course and you can adjust. And I think that one of the burdens of Aryan mankind is that it's incumbent upon us to inform ourselves so that we can make good decisions and so that we can be responsible to make those decisions. It's much easier to be an NPC, as the kids would say, about life and just kind of float along than to choose to learn, choose to know things, and then choose to act upon the knowledge that you learn. So, yeah, gain wisdom, learn, look into things, and make decisions based on things that you believe to be factual and you believe to be true, and look at those things and examine them. Always hold those things up to scrutiny. I believe that firmly, and I think that's a solid thing to stand on. That's what we've got for this week. Thank you guys so much for your questions, for joining us as we went through this really powerful piece, kind of a jewel that I think often gets overlooked in our lore. Thank you all for everything. Thank you for those who donated and who are generous. I hope everybody who can joins me at Winter Nights in New Hampshire here in a week and a half. Look forward to seeing you guys there. And yeah, we're doing great things. I appreciate people who stepped up tonight.
Great.
As always, I enjoy spending Wednesday night with one of my best friends talking about something I really love. So thank you for joining us, Witan Svan.
Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you for.
So I should say this. I will not see you guys next week. I will be on the road traveling to New Hampshire. I say on the road, I'll likely be in the air, but I will be traveling to New Hampshire, so I will not be here. Witan Brandy is going to host a special seasonally themed spooky episode. So we're already getting cool, interesting happenstances and such to discuss on that. I think it'll be a really cool show. I'm a little bit envious that I will not be here for it. So you guys are in for a treat next week. But I will see you in a couple of weeks. Until then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA. Remember, victory never sleeps.